Were you the child who never caused problems? The responsible one, the mature one, the
Please,
easy child,
somebody help me.
the child adults always described as
Ugh,
so well
I can't carry this
behaved,
alone.
so independent, so mature for your age. Maybe teachers loved you, maybe relatives praised you, maybe adults always said, "We never had to worry about you. You made life easier. You're such a good kid." And maybe part of you felt proud hearing those words. But another part of you learned something quietly, something you may still carry today. Do you struggle asking for help? Do you automatically say, "I'm fine," even when you're overwhelmed? Do you feel guilty needing support? Do you apologize too much? Do you say yes when you're exhausted? Do you struggle telling people what you need? Do people think you're strong, while privately, you feel emotionally tired all the time? Do people rely on you, but rarely ask how you're doing? Maybe people admire how responsible you are, how dependable you are, how calm you seem. But privately, you carry pressure nobody sees. You handle things alone. You stay composed. You avoid becoming a burden. And sometimes, you cannot explain why asking for help feels uncomfortable, why resting feels wrong, why saying no feels selfish, why needing people feels difficult. Because somewhere deep inside, you learned something early. Don't make life harder. Don't need too much. Don't ask for too much. Don't become difficult. Don't create problems. Be easy. Be helpful. Be responsible. Be good. And if this feels painfully familiar, this video may explain something you've carried most of your life without realizing it. And what you discover today may completely change how you understand yourself. Because psychology suggests something uncomfortable. Being the good child is not always personality. Sometimes, it's adaptation. Developmental psychology suggests children naturally adapt themselves to survive emotional environments. Children are remarkably intelligent. Not logically, emotionally, psychologically. Nervous systems constantly learn what creates safety, what creates connection, what creates approval. Some children become loud. Some become rebellious. Some become emotionally invisible. And some become something else. Responsible too early, easy too early, mature too early, independent too early. Not because they naturally needed less, not because they naturally struggled less, but because their nervous system learned survival. Psychology suggests something powerful. Children naturally adapt themselves to preserve connection. Connection means safety. Belonging means safety. Approval means safety. And if children unconsciously learn, life becomes easier when I need less, they adapt. If children learn, people are happier when I don't complain, they adapt. If children learn, love comes when I perform, they adapt. Not weakness, not personality. Adaptation, survival. Because children do not stop needing, they stop showing needs. And that changes everything. The first hidden pattern many good children develop begins quietly. So quietly, most people never realize it happened. You learn to take up less space, not physical space, emotional space. Maybe adults around you felt overwhelmed, busy, stressed, emotionally unavailable. Financial pressure, relationship problems, generational pressure, exhaustion. Maybe nobody intentionally taught you to become smaller. But children notice everything, more than adults realize. Maybe you noticed stress and learned, don't add more problems. Maybe you noticed adults overwhelmed and learned, don't ask for too much. Maybe sadness felt inconvenient, needs felt uncomfortable, emotions felt heavy. So your nervous system adapted, quietly, automatically, brilliantly. You become easier, calmer, more independent, more self-sufficient. Not because your needs disappeared, because expressing them stopped feeling safe. Psychology sometimes describes this as emotional adaptation. The nervous system learns. My needs create pressure. My emotions create problems. I should handle things myself. And over time, something painful happens. Children do not stop needing support. Children stop asking. Maybe you became low maintenance. The child adults praised. The child who never complained. The child who never asked for much. The child people rarely worried about. People may have admired your maturity. But sometimes, what looks like maturity is survival. And years later, That pattern quietly follows people into adulthood. You struggle asking for help, struggle expressing needs, struggle receiving support. Not because you're cold, not because you're distant, because years ago, your nervous system learned, need less. The second hidden pattern often develops beside the first, becoming responsible too early. Maybe you became emotionally mature before you were emotionally supported. Maybe you became the peacekeeper, the helper, the responsible one, the child who kept things together. Some children become emotional caretakers, quietly, without realizing it. You learn how to notice tension, read moods, manage emotions, predict problems, avoid conflict, keep peace. Psychology sometimes refers to this process as parentification, when children emotionally adapt by becoming responsible too early. Not responsibility appropriate for their age, responsibility beyond it. Sometimes children become emotional support systems. Sometimes they become caretakers. Sometimes they become invisible. Maybe people described you as wise beyond your years, so mature, such an old soul. And maybe people genuinely meant it as praise. But sometimes, what looks like maturity is adaptation, survival, because children naturally step into emotional roles environments require. If chaos exists, some children become stabilizers. If stress exists, some children become caretakers. If emotional support feels inconsistent, some children become independent early. Not because they want to, because survival teaches them to. And years later, those patterns stay. You may become the person everybody depends on, the reliable friend, the dependable partner, the responsible coworker, the emotionally available person, the problem solver, the helper, the one people trust. And while those qualities are beautiful, they can become heavy, very heavy. Because somewhere along the way, you may have learned something dangerous. My value comes from being useful. And usefulness slowly becomes identity. Helping becomes identity. Responsibility becomes identity. Giving becomes identity. And suddenly, rest feels uncomfortable. Receiving feels uncomfortable. Being cared for feels uncomfortable. Because giving became safe. Needing became unsafe. And psychology suggests something painful. Children who become responsible too early often grow into adults who feel responsible for everything. Everyone's emotions, everyone's comfort, everyone's happiness, everyone's disappointment. And carrying that much responsibility becomes exhausting, emotionally exhausting, mentally exhausting, quietly exhausting. But perhaps the deepest pattern begins here. Learning love through performance. Maybe approval came through being easy, responsible, helpful, successful, mature. Maybe people said, "You're the good child. You never cause problems. You're so responsible. You always help. We don't need to worry about you." And slowly, your nervous system begins connecting worth with performance, love with usefulness, connection with giving. Psychology calls this conditional approval, when acceptance feels connected to behavior, performance, achievement, being easy, being useful, being good. And children naturally adapt because preserving connection matters. So eventually, you may quietly learn. I become valuable when I give. I become lovable when I'm helpful. I become accepted when I need less. Not because somebody explicitly taught it, because your nervous system learned it. Repeatedly, quietly, over years. And perhaps years later, without realizing why. You still carry those rules, still earning, still proving, still helping, still performing, still trying to become enough. And what protected you as a child may quietly become the thing exhausting you as an adult. Hanhengrelaks. What protected you as a child can quietly become the thing hurting you as an adult. Because survival patterns do not automatically disappear. They follow people into adulthood, into friendships, into work, into love, into identity. And one of the first hidden costs many good children carry into adulthood is this: struggling to ask for help. At first, it does not look like a problem. People admire independence, responsibility, self-sufficiency. People say things like, "You're strong. You always handle everything. You never need anything." And maybe for years, part of you felt proud of that. But psychology suggests something important. Hyper-independence often begins as adaptation, because when children learn early that support feels inconsistent, uncomfortable, or emotionally expensive, they stop reaching, not because they stop needing support, because needing support stops feeling safe. Maybe growing up, you learned how to solve problems alone, handle stress alone, cry alone, process difficult emotions alone, figure things out alone. Maybe nobody intentionally taught you that. Maybe life taught you. And years later, asking for help can feel strangely uncomfortable, even when you desperately need it. You tell yourself, I can handle it. It's not a big deal. Other people have bigger problems. I'll figure it out myself. Even when you're exhausted, overwhelmed, burned out, struggling, part of you still says, don't be difficult. Don't create problems. Don't need too much. And sometimes, people who need support the most ask for it the least. Not because they are cold, not because they are emotionally unavailable. Because years ago, their nervous system learned, depend on yourself, handle it yourself, need less. And eventually, independence becomes identity, not healthy independence, protective independence. The kind that feels strong externally, while privately becoming heavy, very heavy, because carrying life alone becomes exhausting. And many people who were the good child quietly carry something else too. People pleasing. At first, people pleasing often looks positive. Kindness, thoughtfulness, generosity, reliability. You become the person people trust, depend on, need, because somewhere early, your nervous system learned something important. Keeping people happy creates safety. Avoiding disappointment creates safety. Avoiding conflict creates safety. Psychology suggests children naturally become experts at reading emotional environments, especially children who learned early. Being easy keeps things calm. So maybe today, you notice tone changes immediately. Facial expressions, silence, energy shifts, one small change, and suddenly your nervous system reacts. Are they upset? Did I do something wrong? Should I fix this? Are they disappointed in me? And before you even realize it, you adjust yourself. You apologize quickly. Say yes when you want to say no. Over-explain simple choices. Hide frustration. Hide disappointment. Hide needs. Because disappointing people feels uncomfortable, sometimes overwhelmingly uncomfortable. And psychology suggests something painful. People-pleasing often develops when emotional safety once depended on keeping environments stable, keeping people comfortable, keeping relationships calm. And years later, you may become highly skilled at caring for everyone else, while quietly abandoning yourself. You become emotionally available for everyone, but emotionally unavailable to yourself. You become easy to depend on, easy to like, easy to need, but difficult to fully know. Because people-pleasing often requires hiding pieces of yourself. Needs, limits, exhaustion, frustration, sadness, anger, fear. And eventually, you become so focused on who people need you to be, you lose the connection with who you actually are. And that creates something deeply painful. Feeling invisible. People appreciate you, depend on you, trust you, need you, but somehow you still feel unseen, not physically unseen, emotionally unseen. Because here is what happens quietly over years. When people become used to you always being okay, they stop asking. When people become used to you carrying everything, they assume you always can. When people become used to your strength, they forget strength needs support too. Maybe people know what you do, but not how you feel. Maybe people admire you, but do not fully understand you. Maybe people rely on you, but rarely ask, are you okay? And slowly, something painful happens. You become highly valued, but not deeply known. Psychology suggests humans do not only need usefulness. We need connection. We need emotional visibility. We need to feel understood, safe, seen, known. And many former good children become experts at functioning, performing, helping, giving, supporting, without fully learning how to receive, how to express, how to be emotionally visible. Because years ago, being emotionally visible did not always feel safe. So now, even surrounded by people, part of you still feels alone. And maybe one of the deepest hidden costs is chronic exhaustion, not ordinary tiredness, a deeper exhaustion. The exhaustion of carrying too much, for too long. Responsibility, pressure, expectations, emotional labor, invisible emotional work. The pressure to always stay calm, always stay responsible, always stay dependable, always stay strong. Psychology suggests something important. The nervous system was never designed to remain responsible for everything, all the time. But many good children grow into adults who feel responsible for family problems, work problems, relationship problems, other people's emotions, other people's comfort, other people's disappointment. And eventually, the nervous system begins carrying pressure it was never designed to hold, which creates emotional fatigue, mental fatigue, burnout. Not because you are weak, not because you are failing, because carrying invisible pressure takes energy, enormous energy. And perhaps the hardest part, many people become so used to survival mode, they stop recognizing exhaustion. Burnout becomes normal. Overfunctioning becomes normal. Carrying too much becomes normal. Until one day, the body begins speaking. Exhaustion, irritability, emotional numbness, overwhelm, difficulty resting, difficulty relaxing, difficulty feeling joy. Not because something is wrong with you, because survival requires energy. Constant adaptation requires energy. And many people who were once praised for being the good child quietly grow into adults carrying pressure nobody ever taught them how to put down. But here's where psychology changes everything. Because these patterns were never proof you were broken. They were proof you adapted. And understanding that changes everything. Before we go further, there is something important you need to hear. Your independence wasn't coldness. Your responsibility wasn't weakness. Your silence wasn't emptiness. Your people-pleasing wasn't failure. Your exhaustion wasn't laziness. They were adaptations, survival strategies. Your nervous system did exactly what it was designed to do. You learned how to notice stress and stay helpful. Not because something was wrong with you, but because it felt safer. But here is the difficult truth. Survival patterns do not always serve adult life. The same independence that protected you can become loneliness. The responsibility can become exhaustion. Healing begins when shame ends. Many former good children criticize themselves for patterns they used to survive. Understanding creates change, not shame. When people understand patterns, they stop fighting themselves. Healing means adding something back. You, your needs, your emotions, your humanity. It begins with something simple, learning needs. Notice when your mind goes quiet when someone asks, "What do you need?" Healing begins with noticing. Ask yourself, what do I need right now? Not what others need. Maybe rest, maybe space, maybe support. Needing things does not make you difficult. It makes you human. Healing grows slowly through tiny moments. Moments where you choose yourself, without guilt. Maybe saying, "I'm tired," instead of pretending you're okay. Maybe saying no without explaining yourself. Your value was never supposed to depend on how useful you were, or how little space you took up. Psychology suggests human worth is not like performance. You do not become worthy because you sacrifice yourself. Your value exists even when you rest, even when you struggle or disappoint people. A younger version of you needed someone to say, "Other people's emotions are not always your responsibility." Disappointment is not rejection. Boundaries are not cruelty. Needing support is not weakness. Imagine someone you deeply care about. Would you tell them, "You should be doing more"? Probably not. You would offer patience and kindness. Many offer compassion to everyone, except themselves. Self-compassion does not mean lowering standards. It means removing cruelty. You can grow without becoming your own enemy, becoming safer inside your own mind and life. You deserved support too. You deserved comfort, patience, and emotional safety. You were never too emotional, never too difficult, never too much. You were a child adapting and surviving. If you still struggle today, that does not mean you failed. It means some part of you is still protecting old pain. Healing is possible, one small act of self-kindness at a time. You are not broken. You are human. If this video felt personal, comment below, "I relate." Subscribe if you are learning how to finally start living. This channel exists for people who think deeply and spent too many years believing they had to earn connection. Here, you do not have to hide who you are anymore.